No, we missed each other. It was, right? It's probably more of a mess now because DOT's contractor was out there today, but it's... Embankment, yep. Theoretically. I don't know if our pipes had encroachments. I'm not sure. Well, it's unbelievable. You know,
Hello, Christopher again.
what held together?
Council Vice President.
When DOT replaced the bridge, they never fixed it the right way. They never. The feeling was unbelievable. Sections of it. There's a section up the line.
It's not in there,
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a little after 7:30. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Okay, in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act of New Jersey, adequate notice of this meeting was provided on January 5th, 2021 by sending written notice and electronic notice to the Courier News and the Star Ledger, posting on the website and the bulletin board in the municipal building, and filing with the township clerk. A subsequent notice with live stream information was provided on September 3rd, 2021. At this time, I would ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Councilman Kirsch?
Here.
Councilman Padilla?
Here.
Councilman Nordales?
Here.
Councilman Ring?
Good evening here.
Council President Pedrosa?
Okay. At this time, I would ask all those present, if you could, please join me in standing and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, I would ask for a motion and comment on the minutes from the August 16th, 2021 meeting, and also the August 23rd special session, which is virtual access meeting.
I'll move both those minutes.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. The next order of business is Township Council reports. This evening, I'd like to start with Councilman Ring.
Thank you, Council Vice President. Since our last council meeting, I participated in the Welcome Home event for the 14 and under baseball World Championships as they came back to Bridgewater. And then the only other item I'd like to just take a moment and acknowledge our EMS, fire, police, DPW, and everyone involved with the response to the remnants of Hurricane Ida. A lot of hours were exhausted by many volunteers and employees, and commend them for their efforts. That's my report.
Tim, thank you very much. Councilman Kirsch?
Yes, thank you. So at our virtual meeting, I expressed some of my thoughts about the storm, about the recovery, the immediate recovery from the storm. I also spoke at our vigil. What I'd like to, if no one objects, is provide my comments from the vigil to the clerk to include in the record. I'll simply summarize by saying this has been an extraordinary time for our nation, for our state, and of course for Bridgewater Township. And in that extraordinary challenge, I think we've seen some of the best of what Bridgewater has to offer in terms of our first responders, volunteers, ordinary citizens helping each other out. Thing that really has struck me the most is the generosity of our community in literally filling a tent to the rafters multiple times with cleaning supplies. And I'm proud to report, to the governing body, to those in the room, to those who may be hearing us elsewhere, otherwise, that we distributed those cleaning supplies and other necessary items, and were able to not only fulfill the needs of course, the Bridgewater residents that desperately needed them, but we were able to send a full truckload over to Manville. We were able to send a carload or more over to our friends in need in South Boundbrook, in Greenbrook. Due to the generosity of our community, and again, crises know no borders, and compassion knows no borders, certainly no municipal borders. I'm very proud that the supplies that were provided not only met our residents' needs, but could really help some of our neighboring communities, our friends, who have had and continue to have even greater need. And one of the things I expressed when we met on Friday in virtual session is how proud I am to be a part of this governing body, to be a part of our community's leadership, that we were able to take decisive action. We were able to begin the road to recovery from an infrastructure standpoint extremely quickly. So those are my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Councilman Nogales?
Thank you, Mr. President. To try to completely capture the issues and effects since the last council meeting would be an exercise in frustration. However, allow me to touch on just a few areas. The special council meeting of 8/28 continued our road enhancement quest with additional streets to be paved as part of our 2021 program. The welcoming home of the victorious World Series champion 14 under baseball team back from the Iowa games was very uplifting. A crowd filled this courtroom in support of those young men. The horrendous results of Hurricane Ida led to many meetings with the administration and visits to affected businesses and homes. In a few minutes, you will hear a more complete report from the administrator. On behalf of the council and the residents of Bridgewater, I want to thank Michael Pappas, Tom Genova, and Richard Schimpf and his DPW staff for their continued boots on the ground in responding to requests for aid which made it into a very, very long week. Vice President Credell and I took part in the house-to-house distribution of Red Cross cleanup kits to numerous areas of the town. We used the piles of debris outside the houses as our benchmark to identify those in need. The response to residents to the news that the township had contracted for at-home pickup of storm damage was very well received. There will still be an opportunity, by the way, for additional traditional bulky trash drop-off at Polhemus Lane. You'll hear more about that in a few minutes. I did attend the vigil to ask for divine help in meeting the challenges of Mother Nature, and not to repeat any of what Councilman Kirsch is saying, but the outpouring of support for people who were disadvantaged by the storm was great to see. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Howard. For my report, certainly what a difference a week makes. That's a comment that's understated, I guess. I, along with Howard, was at the ballpark welcoming our Babe Ruth League team back. And starting on the 28th, there were multiple meetings held with the township regarding our responses to and preparation for the Hurricane Ida and the Gilbride pumping station. There's been a tremendous amount of work going on, and I would like to publicly thank Administrator Pappas for his leadership and his guiding hand during this very difficult time. Mike, along with other township professionals in public works and so forth, in my opinion, have done a tremendous job in the response and the planning that has gone on for our recovery. And I especially appreciated the debate with the PSE&G about what needed to be done on Route 22. Michael, that was a very uplifting experience. Thank you. Because of that, 2 poles have been put in, and we're well on our way to recovery there. And I'd just like to add this, to support Councilman Ring and Kirsch and Norgalis's comments, that while today our focus is on recovery from Hurricane Ida, I'd like to recognize the efforts of our township first responders during the storm, responding to water rescues, building explosions, alarm activations, all under extremely hazardous conditions. Our township residents are extremely fortunate to have people who are willing to put their lives on the line to help others. And I guess the only thing I could say to that is, God bless our police, fire, and squad personnel for all that they do. I think Bridgewater Township is extremely fortunate to have these organizations funded by people who are willing to tackle the task. That's the end of my report. I'll now go to Administrator Pappas. If there's a mayor's report, Mike.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. On behalf of Mayor Minch and the administration, we want to thank you, members of the council, for your support and very active engagement since last Wednesday night. The fact that each of you, in your own way, have made yourselves personally available to participate in what has been needed is greatly appreciated by Mayor Minch, myself, and of course, the rest of the staff. Some folks may not know this, but one of the things that, as Mr. Norgalis said, he, Mr. Cordilla, Mr. Kirsch, and Mayor were available to personally visit homes and businesses to distribute needed supplies, and they were able to assist the staff, frankly, in getting word to us about specific needs that perhaps first responders or others could react to, and that was extremely helpful. Councilman Ring, in his act as a first responder, I personally visited with him. I can't remember if it was Thursday night, Friday night, but he was able to coordinate a number of rescue squads from out of Somerset County to come and provide relief for the squads that had been really working around the clock. And I know that those folks appreciated his efforts in that coordination. I'll jump around on a number of fronts. The bulky trash pickup that has been mentioned here is scheduled to begin this Saturday. The county is also offering some pickup in certain areas, and they're going to coordinate where they are able to do so. But folks should know that there is a portal on our website. There's a phone number for the Office of Constituent Relations, for one, to ensure that we record the street addresses of properties that need to have items picked up that were related to the flood. There will be more than one run through the town to ensure that we pick up everything, but if people want some assurance that they won't be passed by, we encourage them to register. A couple of interesting statistics. There were over 130 abandoned vehicles within the borders of Bridgewater Township. So as a result of the huge volume of rain and the flood waters that came with it, unfortunately there were several individuals who died in the flood waters here in Bridgewater. At least one Bridgewater resident who was on their way home passed away not outside of the borders of Bridgewater. The damage that each of us have witnessed, visited businesses and residential properties, even spoke to one of the owners of one of the long-term care facilities who sustained some damage, not nearly as much as others. But every day I'm learning of more individuals that have been very severely impacted. One of the most significant challenges that we faced was to infrastructure. Bill Burr, our township engineer, is here, and I'm going to call upon him in a moment to go through some of the more technical aspects of what has occurred. But just to highlight, the township has a sewer system and a significantly sized sewer main that runs underneath Route 22 problem where raw sewage was being emitted into the Middlebrook. So when we saw that that took place, we responded, obviously. We were able to engage Vossler's excavation in Branchburg, and they were literally on the spot within an hour. And with Bill and Tom Genova came up with a plan to prevent any additional sewage from being emitted into the Middlebrook. And Bill will go through the details of what has been a monumental effort to coordinate between not just DEP, who we notified immediately, and Bill has kept in contact with them at least on a daily basis, if not multiple times a day, but with the DOT, because Route 22 is a state highway. And of course, there are utility poles, as has been mentioned, utility company, Verizon, cable TV company, the challenge of coordinating all of these entities to allow our contractor to begin to safely begin a permanent replacement of this sewer line has been quite an experience. Happy to say that they've made progress. They're probably about a day ahead of schedule from what they originally had laid out. Originally, frankly, one of the companies said that it would be 2 or 3 weeks before we could see the utility pole moved. And we said that was absolutely not acceptable to Township. And the mayor made a call to an individual in the state government, and that certainly helped, I believe, to expedite this. They were on the job the next day. So numerous conference calls with sometimes 20 people from these various agencies. Certainly not complaining. Bill and I have been engaged in this as Mr. Genova, Mr. Schimpf, and others, but it has been an amazing process. So the sewer force main is one, and Bill will talk about that. That was the most immediate, emergent situation that we had to deal with. Bill will talk about the 18 roads that were damaged to one extent or another from the storm. The mayor, Mr. Burr, Mr. Schimpf, and I spent the morning, this was last Thursday morning, going to town. The DPW, residents, police all reported roads that needed to be inspected. We did that, took photographs. Then members of the council joined us during the course of the day. Unbelievable images in my mind. Drainage problems. We had a number of channels and drainage ditches that obviously became full, creating problems that were impeding massive amounts of stormwater. Those are, we're going to talk about that on the agenda. There's a resolution where we are requesting that the council approve that would enable us to retain a contractor on an emergency basis through a state contract to try to address some of these. And then last but certainly not least, Vossler Avenue, as you all know, has been at one point partially closed. There is a weakening of a head wall, I guess is the correct term, the retaining wall that Bill will describe and necessitated the closure. Bill's recommendation, he had an associate who joined him and had another professional engineer come up with that recommendation, and he'll go into the details about that. But the amount of time that Bill Burr has spent has basically been here with us 7 days a week since this began. He's one of the individuals that has. He has had to coordinate as a professional engineer the interaction with the DOT, with DEP in particular. Has done an amazing job. And very thankful for his personal efforts using his professional expertise, and then of course the road and other issues that we'll talk about. So I probably will want to speak after he does, but Mr. Cordell, if you don't mind, if Bill could address the council and talk a little bit more about some of the technical aspects of things that I've not covered.
Very well. Bill, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mike, for
Pull
the.
that
Yeah, pull the mic closer so you'll be
Order.
recorded.
Thank you very much for having me tonight. Thanks, Mike, for the intro. You did a great job of summarizing really what we've been up against the last week. As everybody knows, Bridgewater sustained tremendous damage to its infrastructure. Really, our efforts have been focused on those those major projects that Mike just brought up. The first one that came on my radar, frankly, was the sewer main break at the Middlebrook as it passes under Route 22. That was an especially difficult repair because of the various agencies that were involved. Not only did our sewer main sever, and we lost 150 foot of our trunk line as well as a manhole, the DOT's bridge as well as PSE&G's utility pole were also damaged. So it's really been a multi-agency effort to try to address that damage. We immediately mobilized an emergency contractor to try to separate the floodwaters from our raw sewage. That was accomplished the actual night of the break, which we discovered probably mid to late morning on Thursday morning. The second step was to implement a temporary bypass. That allowed us to contain all the raw effluent so that we had no more discharge of sewage water into the Middlebrook. That bypass was implemented, and I think it went online over the weekend. At that point, going into the beginning of this week, our contractor was at a standstill, essentially, until DOT and Public Service, the utilities, took care of their obligations, which was to remove that utility pole, have all of the other utilities jump onto the two new poles that were installed. So we have 2 new poles in place. All the utilities have been moved to the new poles. And at this point today, DOT's contractor was removing the damaged abutment wall. I anticipate that work will be done tomorrow. So hopefully by mid-afternoon tomorrow, all of the prep work necessary to allow us to come back in and finish our final sewer repair will be done and in place. If all goes according to plan, our contractor is ready to come back Saturday morning and start work on the permanent repair of the sewer main. So that work will probably take 2 days at least. If all goes well, that project should be finished as far as we're concerned early next week. There will still be additional work that will need to take place after the fact, but that will be by DOT coming up with a plan to perform the permanent repairs to the bridge deck and the stream embankments that were washed away. But our part of the repair will be done early in the week. So we're making progress. It seems slow, but it's been fast moving. There's been a lot of coordination, and at this point, I'm actually pleasantly surprised at how fast some of the other agencies were able to come to the table and get their work done, because at the onset, when the discussion started, we were 2 to 3 weeks out. So we're in a good place now. DEP is happy with our progress. As Mike alluded to, I've been in contact with DEP compliance officers probably no less than 3 times a day since last Thursday. So we're in good standing environmentally. We have everything bypassed, and hopefully that work will be done early in the week. So that's our sewer main break. Does anybody have any questions, or do you want me to keep on rolling through?
Well, Mr. Vice President, just a quick question.
Yep.
I was at the site on Saturday morning. I guess that was at the point where the temporary bypass had been put in place. They were kind of tweaking.
They were working on it. Yep.
They were still tweaking the bypass
Yep.
a little bit. And I know the other members saw the site. I don't know what it looked like, maybe a day or so later. When I was there, it looked like a bomb went off. I mean, absolutely.
I agree.
Both banks, particularly the westerly bank, where the sewer line had been buried
Correct.
to the ground. So I guess my question is, obviously, function is the most important thing right now.
Yep.
Do we expect to restore, the bank the way it was? And I guess from a security standpoint, we want to have that underground in the future, correct?
Correct. Yeah, our sewer main was located within or under the stream embankment as it had existed prior. That storm, the floodwaters washed away, I would guess about a 200-foot long portion of the stream, 50-foot wide by probably 30 to 40 feet high, in the process taking our sewer main with it. If you were standing on the bridge deck of Route 22 looking downstream of the Middlebrook, you would see hard armoring on both sides of that Middlebrook stream channel. When I say hard armoring, you probably have 3 to 4 foot size boulders stabilizing that embankment. For some reason, I don't know why, when the bridge deck was replaced in 2013, directly downstream of the bridge, those boulders were not put in place to help stabilize. So that was just soil with a little bit of gravel under it, and that's exactly what was washed away, unfortunately. So I had a meeting today with DOT officials and their contractor to talk about what steps they're gonna take to, when they restore that embankment, do it in a manner that's not gonna end up like this again. So I recommended that they extend the hard armoring right up to the bridge abutment whenever they're working on a permanent fix for that. But that's absolutely a recommendation. It's on there. They're reviewing it now, and it's in their hands, but we will definitely follow up to make sure. So what we're doing in the meantime is we've come up with a plan that I believe will make sense and frankly protect our sewer main for our contractor to take care of as far as backfilling and restoring and protecting our pipe until DOT comes in and does the final stream bank restoration. So it's kind of a two-step process, but I'm comfortable with the design we've come up with to where our main is going to be properly protected until DOT finishes their work.
And it just bears mentioning, as we're here, we're talking about our infrastructure. There's the human side to it. This is the location, or very near the location, where one of the victims was washed away. So, the force of water was so great that it,
Unbelievable.
as I blew away 150 foot of pipe, blew certain portions of concrete infrastructure, and unfortunately took one person with it. So it's sobering, to say the least.
I agree.
Do you think do you think the failure of the bridge abutment above it, where that gap was formed, all that water rushing down, contributed to the failure of the sewer main?
I do.
Okay.
I do. I think it was probably twofold. I think the force of the floodwaters raging underneath created a scouring effect, but certainly the water coming over the bridge deck in concert with the scouring below, it was like a double team effort.
I
It
was,
was a chance.
I
You don't
was-
design anything for that.
yeah.
That's the problem.
I was in that area very early Thursday morning with search and rescue as part of an effort, and the water was still quite high. I mean, you would not know that there was a breach underneath it. The water was so high, and the way it was moving, it was still pretty active.
We were notified by our sewer utility mid-morning that they thought they had a problem because they didn't see the top of the manhole. But it was only until the floodwaters receded 3 to 4 inches that we actually saw the top of the pipes, the upstream pipe and our downstream pipe, and nothing.
Nothing in between, yeah.
So we thought maybe we just lost the top cone of the manhole, but the whole thing was gone.
Yeah.
So
Okay, any other comments? Bill, thank you very much.
sure thing, sure.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
That's just one.
It's 1 of 4.
That's just sewers, we still have roads to go.
I'll speed it up a little bit, but it is important, our roads. So as Mike mentioned, Thursday morning when we came in, we mobilized and we did an assessment of the roads that were, I think, high on Public Works radar, the ones that they had received a lot of calls of. We started going to various neighborhoods to try to see some of the damage that was reported to us. That was Thursday. Since that time, we've been working with Public Works, the police department, and frankly reviewing our databases of all constituents that have called in with concerns about the road conditions, drainage conditions. It also extends into the drainage channels in people's yards. So we've been spending the better part of the last week assessing. I don't want to say that we've been on all 600 some roads in town, but we've been on a lot of roads. We've been trying to determine the limits of damage, the extent of damage. Sometimes the road damage is just on the top wearing course of pavement. Sometimes the entire pavement section is damaged. We have drainage systems underground that have been damaged. Inlets have been blown out. Manholes have been damaged. Sections of curbing has been blown out by the floodwater. So we've been working mostly all week quantifying that, determining the limits, determining the scope of work, and working with our emergency contractor to come up with a pricing and more importantly, a sequence of construction so that they can mobilize as soon as possible. And right now, we're targeting Monday morning, having our road contractor mobilize and start work on some of these road repairs. We've identified on paper 18 roads. Frankly, it is probably going to end up being more than that, but right now we have 18 roads that we've pinpointed as in need of repairs immediately. And again, the damage varies, but we're at 18 and counting. So top line construction was engaged by the governing body last Friday night. We've been in touch with them all week long. They sustained some flood damage at their yard, but they have all their resources ready to go Monday morning. So hopefully from there, we're about a week and a half is what the initial indication is to getting all of this road work complete. So Top Line also has other regularly scheduled work in town. Some of that work is going to continue, but the emergency work is going to take precedent. So they have the resources not only to address our emergent issues, but also continue with some of the regularly scheduled work. So there's going to be a lot of work going on starting Monday. Frankly, at this point, when you talk about the regular work, right through until the weather doesn't allow road work anymore. It's going to be a busy fall. But we've made good progress on assessing the roads. And like I said, there's probably more damage out there, but we've gotten to a lot of it, and we have a pretty good handle, we think, on the full extent. So that's the road work. Yep, Vossler is the next one. So Vossler Avenue, Tuesday late morning, I was notified by Dickie Shimp from DPW that there was a problem on Vossler. So if you can picture the section of Vossler Ave between Hillcrest and Middlebrook, just north of Route 22, on the downhill side or southbound side, where you have the drainage channel adjacent to Vossler, we have a series of retaining walls that were built in 2011. There's 3 of them. When I got out there, what I initially, and there's no easy way to access the bottom of the embankment because it's about 15 feet below, but you have a total failure of one of the retaining walls, about a 50-foot long retaining wall. There's another longer retaining wall, about 150 feet long, that has not failure, but isolated scouring and erosion, both on the top of the wall and on the bottom of the wall. That some of the backfill material is washed away. So we made the determination after looking at it on Tuesday, we made the recommendation that we should close the road to truck traffic because I didn't feel comfortable with Chimney Rock Road being closed and the amount of traffic coming down Vossler. I didn't feel comfortable with truck traffic coming down the road. I didn't see any visible signs of failure of the road surface. There was no cracking, no settlement or depression, so that's why we felt comfortable keeping it open to passenger vehicles. Yesterday morning, we brought in one of our geotechnical engineers and we did a full-on assessment of all of the walls. We made our way down into the stream embankment and really got a first-hand look at it, and it was a lot worse than initially envisioned. We knew we had one failed wall, but frankly, some of the damage to the second wall was enough to confirm to me that we really did need to close the road, particularly in light of what was forecasted for the rain event last night. So we implemented the closure just before, I think, dinner time last night, maybe 5 or 6 o'clock, and the road has been closed to through traffic ever since. We have barricades up at Middlebrook and Hillcrest. So at this point, with the road being closed, we've now engaged a contractor as well as our engineers to start coming up with a plan to replace that retaining wall. The concern I have is if we simply put back the same retaining wall, we may be faced with the same issue 5 or 6 years from now if we continue to get these heavy hitting storms. So we're looking at similar, it's gonna accomplish the same objective of retaining the road, holding the road up, but it's gonna be a different design, a design that I think is gonna last much longer. So we're looking at that now. We're frankly running through the Rolodex to find out material availability, scheduling, with crews to get out there and do the work. One thing that I think we're recommending tonight is an approval of a contract to a contractor to help rebuild that wall. But I want to attack that as soon as possible, but I'm waiting on more information as far as, like I said, steel. We're waiting on pressure-treated lumber. Is the design that we're calling for is a soldier pile and lag wall, and it's not only going to provide temporary stabilization of the road, but it's also going to act as the basis for the permanent wall that's going to be installed out there. So I think it's the way to go, frankly. It's just going to take, hopefully by tomorrow, mid-morning, for me to have more indication of when we can get going on that. But that's an emergency. I would not recommend that road be open until that wall is rebuilt. And that's one of the things that, we're here to talk about tonight as well.
If I recall, if I understand correctly, the section where it collapsed, the supports collapsed, is going downhill, and it's a left turn, so you're putting pressure on the outside of the road where it failed.
Yes. Yeah, and to be honest with you, I don't have a good baseline for what that drainage channel used to look like, but I suspect it looks a lot different now than it did even a week or a week and a half ago. I can see signs where that drainage channel is 3 to 4 feet lower than what it was last week as a result of the storm. So in some cases, losing all of that material has scoured out the toe of that retaining wall, and that's what contributed to the failure. So it's complicated by the fact that it's a really confined space, and it's very steep. We have sanitary sewer infrastructure. I hate to bring that up again, but we have sanitary sewer in Vossler on that side of the road. So it's an intricate repair, but one I feel confident that we can execute, and frankly, I think we can come up with a design that hopefully we're not back here talking about this in the future.
I think I could say with confidence, we really don't want to be talking about it in the future, so let's get it done right, get it done this time.
Got it.
Mr. Vice President, a couple of questions. From an engineering standpoint, are you satisfied with the way all of those items existed before the massive pressure, the massive and unanticipated pressure that came upon them from this storm?
Yes, I don't, in looking at the design for the wall that was previously installed, I think the design was appropriate. I was not present for the actual installation, but I didn't see any problem with the design. So I can only imagine how much water was in that drainage channel and the amount of force on that wall. It couldn't withstand the boulders that got moved. Did that answer your question?
No, it absolutely does. And to Councilman Curdilla's question/comment before, perhaps a positive that comes from this is an opportunity for us to make an assessment of what is the future need at these various locations. And I would dare to say Washington Valley Road probably also fits into that category. I know that is a county road. I know that the road has been reopened, and that's certainly spectacular news, but I think that...
Chimney Rock.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Chimney.
Right, right.
Chimney Rock has been reopened. You know, if there is another fix that is required, again, whether it's a county facility, whether it's a municipal facility, I think we need to strongly consider that. And of course, you know, the finances behind this, you know, we need to continue to pursue whatever aid
Absolutely.
is going to be available to municipalities, you know, for projects like this.
Agreed.
If I could just make one other comment, we've been told through our OEM coordinator, and I'm sure you've read about it in the press, that FEMA funds are going to be available. We have to apply and do so properly. That would cover 75% of these expenses that we're talking about. The mayor did get a call from Assemblyman Eric Peterson. I spoke with him today, and I described what we've experienced, and indicated frankly that many of us have heard that there's funds that have been received by the state and the federal government that perhaps towns such as Bridgewater that have to now cover 25% of these huge expenses perhaps could be assisted by the state.
Very good. What else? What other bad news you gonna give us, Bill?
The last one, which
Oh, jeez.
this one is going to be, I think, a more sustained effort to address, and that's the rivers, if you want to call it that, the brooks, the streams, the dry drainage channels throughout the township that were just inundated by the floodwaters and the debris and materials that were moved, frankly. I mean, we've been to a lot of properties and seen some of the damage, and it's astounding. That really is the fourth effort that we're confronted with now, is doing a full-on assessment of that damage and coming up with a plan for how we help folks not only clean out the debris, try to reestablish some of these drainage channels. It's a monumental effort. So as Mike alluded to, one of the other resolutions that's on the agenda is to engage a contractor to come in and help with some of the cleaning out of these channels. We've started preparing internally maps from the databases that we have as far as constituents calling in with concerns, with photos, with information, because we don't know every private property and what damage was incurred. So we're really trying to gather that information, document it, and then really come up with a plan for how we can help. I mean, it really is a monumental effort. Ordinarily, there's tremendous DEP permitting requirements. There are some emergency authorizations in place that can help, but we have to take really a global look at this and frankly start looking at the worst of the worst. What, in future storm events in the near term, whose properties are going to be worse damaged. If there's life and safety issues, those are the ones that we have to attack first, and really try to prioritize them and do the best we can. But that, of all four of the projects, the sewer main, Vossler Avenue, the roads, this one, in my mind, is the most difficult because of the uncertainty, the long-term-edness, if you will. The other ones, we make the repair, we're done. These things, it's like these stream channels, they're constantly moving. It's a big deal. So we need to really put a strong effort forward on that to help moving forward.
I can't help but agree with you in talking to residents behind Cuckoldsbrook and thinking he had to cut a hole in his roof to get rescued because the brook rose so quickly.
Yeah.
How long do you think that would take, Bill?
So we're going to be meeting tomorrow, If the resolution is approved, we're going to be engaging immediately the contractor to try to start work on the worst of the worst areas that we're aware of. But it's immediate, Councilman, and it's going to be moving well into next week and probably the following week, really coming up with the approach and frankly ranking and prioritizing what we do.
I appreciate that. I fully understand that there's no quick solution to this, to the problem, and I truly do look forward to hearing in the next few months, weeks and months, how we can proceed to better address issues with our streams and brooks and so on, and with the bottom line, protecting our residents.
Agreed.
I get it, I do.
Mr. Vice President, if I may, just one brief question on this topic. I was at the location on, I guess what I'll call the bowl of Crim Road near Cornell Road, the very challenging situation over there with
Right.
one of these brooks, a massive amount of debris. I'm aware that one home essentially had its foundation blown out
Correct.
from the force of water. Do we have any idea, I know this is a fluid situation, do we have any idea how many structures, residential structures, are currently compromised in such a way that they are uninhabitable?
I know our construction code official has been touring the town and assessing that. I don't have the number now, but it's certainly more than one. I don't know, Mike, if you've been in touch with Steve, but I know that effort is ongoing. I don't know the answer to that, though.
He's out every day, I can assure you that, he and Jane
Yeah.
Monterell are visiting the property after property, but I don't have the count.
I mean, there's one in particular that I saw, one of the walls of the foundation was caved in
Yep.
to the structure. How the structure's still standing is questionable. So, that's something, that will be an aftermath that we'll certainly hear about.
Well, I'm sure we'll get a report from OEM once the FEMA documentation is completed. That'll generate a report where we could see. It wouldn't surprise me if we were just thinking about English Court. Just that area alone, there's numerous homes that have foundations blown out. Klein Place has foundations blown out. And it takes time for all that to come together, so I look forward to that in the future.
Yeah, it's really, from my perspective, it's really a two-pronged approach. We have to, maybe even a three-pronged, we have to open up the channels the best we can to allow, in the near term, storms to continue to convey the water. We have to make an effort to remove all the debris and to some semblance reestablish a channel. And then more long-term, it's hazard mitigation. What can we do in some of these areas to prevent future damage? And that's what's going to take a while, but we're certainly focused at least on the first part, which is the debris removal and trying to get things cleaned up, and then we're going to have to refocus on long-term.
Okay. Bill, I think I wore you out.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you,
Thank you
Bill.
very much for your report and for the work that you've been performing. I know it's long days and a lot of work. Michael, that is probably the longest mayor's report on record. Is there anything else you'd like to add to it? Thank you. Okay, at this point, we'll go to agenda item number 7, which is a proclamation for Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month. Mr. Pappas, I'd like to defer to you if you'd like to read the proclamation, please.
Sure, thank you. Whereas ovarian cancer is the leading cause of gynecological cancer death in the United States, and whereas ovarian cancer is known as the subtle disease because its symptoms are often difficult to detect and can mimic those of other diseases and disorders, whereas there is no early detection test for ovarian cancer, and recognition of the warning signs are essential to the early detection and effective treatment of the disease. Whereas the symptoms of ovarian cancer include abdominal and pelvic pain, difficulty eating, and frequent urination. Whereas because early symptoms of ovarian cancer are commonly overlooked, increased public awareness and knowledge of the disease, its risk factors, and its subtle symptoms saves women's lives and are essential in getting a diagnosis and advantageous treatment
Thank you, Mike. At this time, we will move the meeting to open to the public. I would ask for a motion to open.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Ring, a second by Councilman Kirsch. All in favor, please?
Aye.
All in favor? Members of the public wishing to address the council on any matter will be allowed 2 minutes to speak unless there are unusual circumstances. I would ask that any member of the public who wishes to speak this evening, please come up to the podium, clearly state your name and address, and we'll listen to what you have to say.
Good evening. The podium's turned around. So makes it a little tough. But I'm Kathy Franco. I think you all know that. 766 Weemac Road. First, I'd like to start by expressing my gratitude to the Department of Public Works, the Police Department, and all of our volunteer fire and rescue who worked tirelessly. I know the past, especially the first 48 hours, and definitely the past week. I'd also like to thank all of our citizens who have either donated supplies, goods, time, or money to the relief efforts of those of our Bridgewater neighbors and surrounding communities affected seriously by the flooding. I'd like to thank Bridgewater Township for their promptness in having an emergency meeting to approve the money needed for emergency repairs to roads and to approve money for the bulk trash pickups. On tonight's agenda, the council, I would like to encourage to vote in favor of the waiving of permit fees for the inspections for storm-related repairs. I would hope that the council could find a way to do a combined virtual and in-person meeting in the future. I know we've gone back and forth. It would be very helpful. I know there are people who are in their homes or perhaps in hotels or with family or friends who could not come to this meeting tonight because of their situation with the flooding, and therefore they cannot contribute to this meeting. I would hope that we can support our own Bridgewater, Findern, and Boundbrook families who were so seriously affected by these flood waters. And finally, in the Teal initiative, is the township are they providing the teal ribbons that citizens can pick up, or is there a place that we can access those if people hope to participate in that program and place those around their businesses or their households?
I think so. I think it's the police department, but we can get information out about that.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good evening. It's Jill Gladstone, 25 Linville Lane in Bridgewater. I just want to echo what Mrs. Franco just said and offer my sincere gratitude and thanks to the Department of Public Works, the police, EMT, fire department, all the volunteers that put their lives at risk all the time. And last week, it's still, for me and for everybody, I'm sure it's just so hard to process what we went through. We read about it or we see in the news, you know, places more like Louisiana that gets hit with hurricanes, Florida, and we've had hurricanes here, but we haven't seen the loss of life, the displaced families, and it just really breaks my heart. But I really wanted to say a special thank you to all the emergency workers. And the fourth topic that we heard from Mr. Byrd, as he was going through each area of infrastructure, was very interesting to hear. But the fourth topic about the brooks and rivers and streams, I think that is so important. I had a friend of a friend told me about a family on Gray Bar that didn't have any family near here to help some younger people. So a bunch of volunteers went to help move things out of their basement, and she pointed out, you know, that house over there, foundation blew out, and that house over there, foundation blew out. They were lucky because they had a basement window that actually blew out. The window shattered, which alleviated the pressure against the wall, the foundation wall. So their foundation is fine, but they still cannot live in the house for a long time. I met another woman, a widow, who told me that a contractor knocked on her door to say I could remove the debris from your basement and clean, and she said, how much? Don't worry about it, don't worry about it. Well, she got ripped off, and the guy gave her a bill and I came back the next day and I said, please, I watched her. I said, here's the number to the Division of Consumer Affairs, the state. You have to report this. There are people out there going door to door, preying on vulnerable people, maybe because she was alone, a widow, and she was scared. It's terrible. I would love to see some sort of public service announcement from the township to just really warn people. Maybe you have, I'm not sure. But when I saw that firsthand and how she was taken advantage of, no written estimate. It's supposed to be a written estimate for anything over $500. She really got taken. So again, thank you again from the top. Thank you to all the rescue workers, and thank you for all your work too.
Thank you. Is there anybody else to be heard this evening? Seeing, oh, another one. Come on up, Jeff.
Hi, good evening. Jeff Foose, 6 Forest View Drive, Martinsville. Bill, it's been a pleasure working with you on the zoning board, and your expertise really shone through tonight. And everybody here, thank you for your leadership, especially Mike Pappas. It's just been an incredible week, and I think the previous comments are really heartfelt, and our community's really come together. One point I do want to bring up, and I'll make it very brief because I don't have all the facts, and I'm hoping that someone on this council or in the administration are going to find out. But the third floodgate in Bound Brook that didn't close, it really bothers me because there's 3 floodgates that were built in the last 10 years. They were part of the Greenbrook floodplain. $110 million, at least what I can find, was spent on these 3 gates, and 2 of the gates were successfully closed at the request of Somerset County, and 1 gate wasn't. And there was a train, obviously New Jersey Transit abandoned a train 2 hours before the storm hit. And in those 2 hours, I really am at a loss for either our sheriff or, frankly, I would have been there with my Jeep to push it over. I just can't imagine that this community, this county, wouldn't have rallied to close that last floodgate. And why is it important? Because it's a Bound Brook gate. Well, what happened at Patriot Stadium and STS, which is our rateable, in Finderan and other upstream ratables and residents, they were impacted. And, I guess you can make the argument, well, there was so much water that 1 floodgate didn't matter. But what does matter is that somebody didn't communicate. Someone in Somerset County didn't communicate with the state, or the state didn't communicate with the local authorities. But believe me, there are people that would have found a way to move that train the last 20 feet to get that gate closed. And Alan, I know this is your neighborhood. I know you're very close with your residents and your neighbors. I can't imagine that we couldn't have saved property and maybe saved lives by getting that gate closed. So it is a Bound Brook issue. I'm going to leave you with what Mayor Faison said today. He said it both to the Star Ledger and he said it publicly. Had that gate been closed, it definitely would have helped us on the western side of Bound Brook. And frankly, the western side of Bound Brook in Bridgewater, we share a very common problem, and that's the water runoff there. So thank you again. Good evening.
Thank you, Jeff. Mr. Pappas, regarding the public service announcement for fraud, we can publish something in that effect for our residents? Sure. I think that would be very helpful. And I think as time goes by, we'll learn more about what actually happened in Bound Brook with that gate. And my curiosity is why the train was stopped. I have no clue what it was doing there.
Mr. President, I don't know if we want to close to the public, and then I can share some level of knowledge that I have of it. Do we want to close to the public first?
I'd like to close to the public.
Motion to close public input.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move close to the public at 8:31.
So, Mr. Vice President, so I toured that site on Saturday morning, and it's, I don't know how many have seen it. It's a swing gate that literally goes across the railroad tracks among other areas. And what I've come to learn and understand is that when Somerset County chooses to close those gates, they need to provide New Jersey Transit with 2 hours advance notice, which makes all the sense in the world, because that essentially shuts down the Raritan Valley line. It does basically shut down the Raritan Valley line. So that would presumably give New Jersey Transit the ability to put its people and its equipment where it wants to be for the period of time when the floodgate is closed. Exactly the timing, what failed, what communication failed, I can guarantee you that those will be fully investigated, and that the public will certainly be made aware of if there were failings of communication or there were failures of decision making. I can guarantee that that will be known. You know, not necessarily today, not necessarily tomorrow, but certainly that will be known soon. And then I think we need to ask ourselves, if there was not sufficient communication to New Jersey Transit, why was a train permitted to stop in that location? It would seem to me that rule number one of the Raritan Valley line should be, if a train is going to stop anywhere, it should not be within that 1,000-foot pier space of track.
Regardless of the weather.
Regardless of the weather. Under no circumstance whatsoever should a train be permitted to stop for any reason. And if it does stop, it needs to be removed very quickly from that critical, I'll just call it 1,000-foot stretch. I didn't know that we came within 20 feet or 25 feet of being able to close the gate. I did not know that, but this is certainly something that will receive a lot of public attention.
Yeah, like I had stated, Michael, I'm curious to see what Mayor Faison will get as an answer, and I'm sure that will be shared. But that over the years, that has been an area that has been grossly affected by flooding on the Bridgewater side and the Bound Brook side. And my understanding on the Bound Brook side, even with the failure of the gate as it was, the damage on Main Street, so to speak, was not as significant as it has been in the past. But I will, we'll learn more as time goes on and more reports are available.
I mean, I'll simply say when flood mitigation projects are designed, they're designed to be executed.
No argument.
There was only partial execution in this case.
I would not disagree. All right, we'll move on. Agenda item 11. We do not have any ordinances to introduce this evening, and what we will do is move on to into our resolutions.
Vice President, 10A?
10A.
I skipped the one we're talking about. It's been a long week. Okay, agenda item 10 is the public hearing and final action ordinance. And this, I'll read the ordinance, then I'll ask for a motion to open for the public for comment, and then for council comments. 10A is an ordinance amending Chapter 206 entitled Vehicles and Traffic, Section 206-33, entitled Section 5, Trucks over 4 tons excluded, to add certain residential roadways, namely Bellicone Street, Bridgewater Avenue, Evergrande Street, South Adamsville Road, Shaw Avenue, Thomas Street, and Wharton Avenue to the list of roadways that trucks over 4 tons are not permitted to utilize within the township. At this time, I would ask for a motion to open to the public.
Mr. President, before we do that, I'd like to offer a comment on the heading.
Sure.
Well, basically, and the move to eliminate South Adamsville Road as one of the streets. That was added, it was not part of the original resolution when it was introduced, but it was introduced as part of the discussion at the introduction. I had a discussion with Susan Bateman, who's the attorney for the Egan property, which is directly adjacent to this. And if South Adamsville Road is left in, it basically strands the business to be able to function as a business. So they need access via Adamsville Road. So, and I'm talking to Alex Fisher, who's part of our legal organization. He agreed that the elimination of South Adamsville Road would be a de minimis issue and therefore would not require reintroduction. And as long as Mr. Corsini confirms that also, I'd like to move that as a modification of this, which would not only be in the heading, but on page 2, there's a section for South Adamsville Road. I would offer that both of those references to South Adamsville Road be removed.
I will second that. No.
Council President, Councilman Rios, can you just, I apologize, what did Alex say again?
We had talked about South Adamsville Road, whether the elimination of it in the document
Great.
was a material issue.
So him and I had a similar conversation, and it seems like we came to different conclusions. He said that was not material.
Well, basically, when we had Matt, I, and a whole gaggle of people were there, and his first impression was, well, any change was a material one. And then we discussed it, and Matt offered his legal opinion, and from my standpoint, based on having gone through these things over the years, an addition would have been a material one, but an elimination of a single street would not be a material change to the document, and therefore not require an additional introduction.
When you say Matt, you meant Matt.
Mention.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree. I'm gonna be
Okay,
honest
well,
with you.
you're our attorney. If you-
Mr. Fisher and I did speak this morning. Before he spoke to you, I know because he was going to speak to you, and we had a very different conversation.
Well,
My question is, should we, I believe, the input that I've been given is that it's not eliminating South Adamsville Road from the ordinance. We could act on it, and if we chose to act on South Adamsville Road in the future, we could do that separately.
So that's correct. I think the issue here, and I'll have to speak with my colleague tomorrow, is the removal of a road from the ordinance, whether or not that's a material. Right.
Well, just to clarify that, we're not removing a road from the ordinance. This road was added after our meeting last
understand
month.
that.
So we're removing a proposed road from the proposed ordinance.
Yeah, so I understand the subtlety, and we did, play with this thought experiment in the office today.
Okay.
And we came to a different, the lab results were a bit different than what Councilman Norgales just described to be in the discussion. Certainly, we can, I don't think anyone disagrees with the outcome. I just, from procedurally, I think that if it's in this version, I think it's a material change. I mean, that was my view, and I thought that was.
So then what would you recommend?
Does that mean that we reintroduce?
I would think you would just have to reintroduce. I don't think anyone thinks that these guys, I mean, I know we have some people here tonight. and
What I'd like to do is people who are here this evening who would like to speak about it, I'd like to take their comments, and if we choose to table until we reword the ordinance,
Yeah, so I think you could reintroduce tonight, merely striking the language. I don't think we can take final action on it tonight. But Alex is really good, so I'm curious what he was thinking, and I'm afraid to, it's a slightly different conversation.
Initially, he said it's a material issue, and then we discussed it, and Matt's view was, a single reader can't be a material issue, and at that point, Alex did not offer any additional statement I have no problem reintroducing it without that. If we want you to be comfortable, you're the guy with the Esquire
So we're
accent.
gonna
So,
table this.
Is the administration, if I may, Councilman, is the administration have any
another
thoughts on
public
this? I was not part of this discussion, and I just, I have the disadvantage here of having spoken with Mr. Fisher prior to this discussion, so, and not having spoken with him subsequent. So maybe if you could bring me up to
I
speed.
think the administration wants to support the council's actions as has been outlined here. If your advice is that South Adamsville Road removal is material, then council could then just reintroduce tonight and striking that road.
I think that's probably prudent. And
Okay,
and
then-
we'll have a discussion and we'll kind of get to it.
Well, it becomes academic then. If the issue is reintroduced, then I would make a motion that we introduce 10A by excluding South Adamsville Road from any portion of the text.
Do we need to first table the existing 10A?
I think you can make a motion to amend and just strike it. That was what that was that was the lab experiment, how it came out in our discussion this morning, with, internally when Alex and I chatted.
So we're making a motion to amend it by
Yeah, I know
striking
that
South Adamsville.
Council Vice President wanted to take some comments from Manny and Jason over here, which he can still do if he wants, wants to open it up to them, but you can all, they may not care if we're going to do what they want us
I
to do.
believe once South Adamsville disappears.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to care, but.
They will head home.
So, I'll leave that at the discretion of the Council Vice President, but I think Councilman Orgelis is dead
Let me ask
spot
a
on.
question. Is there anybody in the public who would like to comment on the ordinance with the exclusion of South Adamsville Road? Hearing and seeing none, what I would entertain is a motion to take agenda item 10A and move it from final action to a reintroduction of ordinance due to the elimination of South Adamsville Road. That's how I would propose it.
Yeah, so I think that motion, it is essentially two motions, but you can make it at the same time. So I'm fine with that as it's on the table.
Listen, I don't want to go through another road report. Let's
Bill
do
Bursch,
it
right
at one time.
So I think that motion, as stated by Council Vice President Cardilla, is valid and can be considered.
I'll second it.
Okay, who made the motion?
Howard.
Howard, second by Tim. All those in favor, please,
Got to call roll.
call the roll, Linda.
Councilman Kirsch?
Yes.
Councilman Cardillo?
Yes.
Councilman Nordala?
Yes.
And Councilman Ray?
Yes.
Okay.
We need a public hearing?
Yes. Set the public hearing on September 20th, public hearing and final action.
September 20th will be the second hearing for final action on the ordinance without excluding South Adamsville Road.
Correct.
But everything else in the ordinance stays the way it is. So for the Venerosa family who's here with us this evening, Bridgewater Avenue, Shaw, Bellicone, and all those streets will remain in the ordinance. We're only removing South Adamsville Road. Okay, so it's a technicality to reintroduce, and that's what we need to do. Okay? All right. Moving on to our resolutions. On the agenda, we have Resolution 12A, emergency appropriation for funds. That resolution has been canceled and will be replaced as we go on through the resolutions with 12J. They all have to do with the appropriations for the storm. First resolution, 12B, is authorizing a waiver of the municipal portion of permit and inspection fees for repair of Hurricane Ida-related damage. I would defer to Administrator Pappas. Mike, if you'd like to comment on this, please.
Sure, there's a portion of each permit that the property owner would apply for that is a municipal's fund which the municipality would collect to carry out those inspections and plan reviews, proposing members to remove that portion. We do not have the legal ability to remove the state, New Jersey's permit fee, but certainly the council, by approving this, would make that possible, and that is what's proposed.
Now, to be very clear about this, residents still need to come in, they still need to get permits for work that's to be done. However, the township portion of the fees will be waived.
And this would expire on December 31st of this year.
Very good, Michael. Thank you. Is there any questions from committee?
I'll move 12B.
Thrilled that we're doing it.
Very good. We have a motion
I'll second.
and a second. Linda, please call the roll.
Councilman Kurd?
Yes.
Councilman Trudilla?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Ring?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. 12C is amending the Township Council Resolution Number 21-01-04-002 to include authorization for tax appeal legal counsel in an amount not to exceed $40,000. Mr. Pappas, any comments?
I believe this was just a clarification that this amount would be provided for tax appeals for Mr. Corsini's firm.
We essentially never did it at reorg. It was a line item that was missing. We never noticed it until the bloodhound like Pat Bissarno let us know, and we just do the amendment to add the line, which is required by the accounting.
Very well. Is there any comments? Hearing none, I would ask for a motion to adopt.
Move 12C.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Linda, please call the roll.
Councilman Kurd?
Yes.
Councilman Trudilla?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Ring?
Yes.
12D is authorizing the municipal tax collector, Darrell Murdoch, to cancel certain real property tax balances of less than $10. Mr. Pappas?
The state of New Jersey permits tax municipalities to waive up to $10 of any late fee, and this will simply delegate that to our tax collector.
I thought
Any comments?
We had already done this in the past. Is there some, can we make this a permanent process? Because this is simply a resolution. Is it time-bounded or something?
Generally, I think resolutions last for a calendar year, if I'm not mistaken.
Resolution stops for the life of the city council.
Should we make it an ordinance?
I don't think you can. I don't think you can by ordinance. I think it's a good idea. I think
Okay.
it's better to
All
do
right.
it that way.
That's fine. I'll
But-
move 12D.
Do I have a
Second.
Okay, Linda, please call the roll.
Councilman Kurd?
Yes.
Councilman Trudilla?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Ring?
Yes.
12E is a resolution authorizing the township attorneys to foreclose certain properties for delinquent taxes in the township of Bridgewater. Mr. Pappas.
In title states the request. I know that there are a number of these properties are held by estates where there are no active individuals, and this does affect our reserve for uncollected taxes, does have an effect upon our budgets, and so all measures have been exhausted to try to reflect these.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, specifically, the second whereas states the township has exhausted all legal and reasonable efforts to address these delinquencies.
Yep.
We've gone as far as we can go.
And I would point out that we have 15,000 properties, so this is a relatively small number when you think of the number of properties that there are in the township.
Thank you, Mike. Is there any further comment, discussion? If not, I would entertain a motion in a second to move on this.
Move 12E.
I'll second.
Linda, would you please call the roll?
Councilman Kurd?
Yes.
Councilman Trudilla?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Ring?
Yes.
Okay. 12F is authorizing participation in the 2021 Regional Center Partnership Challenge Grant Program for creative placemaking in the amount of $15,000 for the purpose of creating a storytelling trail around the perimeter of the Somerset County Library, Bridgewater branch, and placing painted heart sculptures in strategic locations in the regional center. Both projects will embrace local culture and history, health and wellness, art and literature to draw people to Bridgewater to explore our community and strengthen economic vitality. Mr. Pappas.
There is a document that should be been distributed to each of you. It looks like this. It provides some visual images of what is proposed. The regional center that Bridgewater is one of 3 municipalities that's a part of this. These funds have actually been set aside for Bridgewater Township. This similar project was proposed a number of years ago,
Right.
did not advance, and this is an alteration. The proposal is, you've seen in other communities, I know down in Hopewell Township, we've seen
Cows.
these cows. Well, this would be a large heart that would depict certain regions of the township with some of its historical history reflected in art. There will be plan to involve local artists, and we have, if the council supports this and we receive the funds, we would like to come back at some point and make a full-blown presentation as to how we can roll this out.
Very well. Thank you, Michael.
Mr. President, I have a question, please.
Yes.
One of the whereases in this resolution says, whereas the Somerset County Library System will manage the coordination of the changing themes for the storytelling trail, et cetera.
That should be removed.
Well,
Is that not the intent of the township?
okay, because I had asked for the name of the person in the Somerset County Library who would agree to do this.
That was probably in the
I
original.
would request that that paragraph be removed.
Oh, okay.
So just,
Okay.
you could move it as amended. That was probably in the original
Yes.
version.
Okay.
Right? I think that was probably it, yeah. So that's an easy fix.
Okay, is there any further comments? Hearing none, I would ask for a motion and a second to adopt this resolution with the removal of the
Third whereas.
third whereas.
I'll move it.
I'll second.
Thank you. Linda, please call the roll.
Councilman Kirsch?
Yes.
Councilman Cadillo?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Ring?
Yes.
Okay, 12G, resolution authorizing submission of the year 2022 Bridgewater Township request for application with the Somerset County Board of County Commissioners and Somerset County Cultural and Heritage Commission for grant funding to be used for local arts program. Mr. Pappas.
The proposal that we have been putting together would be for an arts festival that would take place most likely here on the municipal complex. The amount that we are requesting is, I think, either $15,000 or $20,000. Component of the application is if you're not able to get that amount of funding, what would your plan be? And we discussed that at length, and likely just scale the program back. We think there's a lot of interest in various segments of the community to display people's ability to express themselves artistically in various ways, and think that there would be a lot of support and involvement in this.
I would agree. Is there any comments? The only comment I have is I'd like to see Michelle had the Bridgewater resident with the military background with her art. I'd like to make assure that she is contacted for display. Look, at this time, look for a motion and a second so we can move on this.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Linda, please call the roll.
Councilman Kirsch?
Yes.
Councilman Cadillo?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Ring?
Yes.
Okay, 12H, approving participation with the state of New Jersey in the 2021 SFY21 Body Worn Camera Grant Program, award number 21-BWC-067, administered by the Department of Law and Public Safety, up to the amount of $187,496. Subaward period is January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2025. Mr. Pappas?
This grant application request is obviously made by the administration of the police department. The dollar amount per chief Payne is the dollar amount that the state of New Jersey has determined that Bridgewater Township would be eligible for. This, to a great degree, is a formality by us, you submitting, the township submitting the resolution authorizing the application. Councilman Ring pointed out earlier today that there's a accompanying document that appeared not to fully be reflected in the resolution. I did speak to Chief Payne about it, that this form of resolution that is before you is the one that each department is utilizing throughout the state, and that the additional detail would be included in a subsequent resolution the council would consider when a proposal comes forth from the administration to actually award the contract.
To actually
and
do
select
the purchase.
vendor. So that is the request. I just point out that, well, let me stop there to see if there's questions.
Thank you for the
I'll move 12H.
clarification.
Okay, is there any other comments?
I'll second
We have
Councilman
a motion and a
Norgelis.
second.
If I could just make one additional comment, just so you're aware, that $187,496 is a significant amount of money, but it is significantly
Less than what we need.
It's going to cost.
Very well.
How many cameras do we have right now?
We have a motion and a second. Linda, please call the roll.
Councilman Kirsch?
Yes.
Councilman Padilla?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Here. Yes.
Councilman Ring?
Yes.
Okay, 12I is award of contract to Spatial Data Logic, SDL, of 285 Davidson Avenue, Somerset, New Jersey, 088773 for the 50-seat and hosting expansion of our township software in the amount of $55,760, funded through each department's operating budget for 2021. Any, Mr. Pappas, your comments, please?
The SDL platform is something that the township has utilized for a number of years. This past year, we've analyzed its capabilities and have determined that we are not utilizing it nearly as much as we could. We're paying for a platform that we're not taking full advantage of. The request to expand the number of township employees that utilize it is we have also determined by training with this firm that there are additional departments that can utilize it and communicate information much more efficiently to, I'll give you an example, there are times that the health department and the zoning official need to communicate. Sometimes they get complaints about the same property. And by sharing information, it would potentially prevent both inspectors have to go and inspect a particular property. We actually had a series of meetings with various departments to communicate where this could be employed, because frankly, I wanted to ensure that the additional expense was worthwhile. And I was convinced that there would be greater efficiencies, that there would be time saved. And again, the one example I gave you is just one of those examples. I do have this, let's pass that on to council. I think Councilman Ring had asked me for a list of departments that are utilizing it, and that's for council's review and information. But the administration highly recommends this. It is included in the budget.
I was amazed when I saw the number 50, but after I saw the list and found out we are actually expanding the use of the system, it made sense, so thank you.
I'd like to note that I did call Mr. Genova this afternoon for an explanation on this as far as the licensing, whether they were dedicated licenses or concurrent licenses. And I'm pleased to learn that it is a concurrent licensed software, and that the expansion is needed because we currently have employees who go to access the software and have to wait because we're at our max. So I'm pleased to hear that.
And it also, if I may, Council Vice President, I spoke to Mr. Genova this afternoon as well, and one of the examples he gave was the fire official goes out, fire inspector goes out, does an inspection. In today's system, they have to come back and do all their paperwork and print their certificates, whereas now they'll actually be able to do everything from a laptop in the field.
That's my understanding also, Tim.
So
Okay, if there's no further comments, I'm looking for a motion and a second.
I'll move 12I.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Michael. Linda, please call the roll.
Councilman Kirk?
Yes.
Councilman Severla?
Yes.
Councilman Rivera?
Yes.
Councilman Ring?
Yes.
Okay, 12J, authorizing an emergency appropriation of funds for the emergency removal of Hurricane Ida-related flood debris and the emergency repair of stormwater management features and other infrastructure, including the emergency repair of retaining walls and the repair of paving and roads associated therewith within the Township of Bridgewater. Mr. Pappas, I think we're well aware of what this is about, so give us a brief comment.
Yeah, I think Bill described it.
He explained it like we was reading the Bible.
I noticed you asked Mr. Pappas for a comment and not Bill.
That's no offense, Bill.
So this is, again, we just provide some funds on an emergency basis for the stormwater management, retaining wall repairs that we discussed here tonight.
Do we have an idea what we're looking at here, Mike?
This is
$500,000 top of the second.
Okay, is there any questions, any discussion?
Can we put that in the heading?
Do we want to consider JK and L on consent,
We could,
since they're all storm-related?
they're all
We're
simple.
gonna put the 500, how about we put the $500,000 right in the heading so everybody knows what we're talking about?
Okay. What I'll do is I'll read K and L, since they're all similar, and we'll let Mr. Burr comment on K and L. K is authorizing the Township of Bridgewater to enter into an emergency contract with Vossler Excavating and Construction for Hurricane Ida storm and flood damage and related infrastructure repairs within the Township of Bridgewater. Mr. Burr, would you like to comment?
Thank you. Yes, that resolution is for Vossler Excavating to replace the failed retaining wall on Vossler Avenue.
Very well. Thank you, Bill.
Mr. Vice President, just a question first. This is the replacement, it doesn't include the bypass.
This is not for this, Vollers is the contractor working on the sanitary sewer repair. This one is for them to replace the failed retaining wall on Vossler Avenue.
All right.
This would be a second project that we've engaged them on.
Could we also state in the heading that it's not to
The
exceed $300,000?
this is $800,000, I believe.
Yes.
It says
Yeah,
300.
Linda, please add the dollars to
Yes,
that.
I'll add that one.
Oh, okay,
Okay,
wait a minute.
Bill, that was an excellent description.
The
Yes. Howard?
the typo is not 300,000, it's
800.
800,000.
We just said that.
Okay.
We
Can
got it.
put that in the heading then?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, and then 12L is authorizing the Township of Bridgewater to enter into an emergency contract with Pave Right Incorporated for Hurricane Ida storm and flood damage repairs within the Township of Bridgewater. Mr. Burr?
So this resolution is to engage PaveRight to start opening up and removing some of the debris from the stream channels, the drainage channels throughout town. So this is the preliminary effort to start with the immediate
And this is estimated at not to exceed $200,000. Okay, any comments?
Before the council takes action, I just want to review numbers here with Mr. Burr on these three resolutions.
Sure.
So, I apologize for us doing it here, but I'd rather the council
Yeah.
make sure we have the correct numbers of what we're talking about here. So, the first resolution was for the additional emergency appropriation, correct?
12J.
12J,
12J.
correct.
The amount in the resolution is 500,000. That is before the additional amount for dollars.
That's correct.
So that should be 8.
So how many eights do we have?
J should be 1 million, because I think the emergency appropriation would cover the expenses that are in the resolutions for K and L, I believe. Right?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that, though.
We're trying to clarify this just a second. So you see what I mean? When we originally proposed resolution J, 500,000, that was when we had a very preliminary estimate for Vossler Avenue,
Correct.
correct?
Correct.
So that, so it should be 1 million, I think it should be 8. You correct me, I want to do the math correctly.
I don't have the resolutions in front of me, but I think J would have originally said 500,000.
That's what it says here.
That would have included 300 for the Vossler retaining wall and 200 for pave right. Based on the latest proposal that I received just before this meeting, 800,000 is the new cost proposal for Vollers for the retaining wall. So that, what was 300 for Vollers goes to 800. What was 200 for pave right stays 200. So I think 800 and 200 is $1 million instead of,
So we're going to go from 500,000 to 1 million.
correct.
Okay.
For the emergency appropriation.
J.
For J.
I was sitting there looking at the numbers, but this was not, we have to correct this now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what we're roughly looking at is a total of $2 million for these three resolutions.
No,
Well, let's go back to K.
no.
K
J is
K-
the emergency appropriation, and then K is 800,000 for Vossler, and
Right.
L would be the 200,000 for pave right.
The total for the three is $2 million.
J is your total of K and L.
Total of-
J is an emergency appropriation, K and L are the awarding of the contracts.
But, yeah,
All right,
so
it's $1
million
million.
is total.
So millions are total.
All right. Do I have any further discussion, or do I have a motion and a
I'll
second?
make a
Cons-
motion on 12J, K, and L.
Second.
Linda, please call the roll on this one.
Councilman First?
Yes.
Councilman Padilla?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Ring?
Yes.
Okay.
Caveat that FEMA's gonna hopefully help us out on all of those.
All right. Is there any further business to be brought before us in open session? Hearing and seeing none. What I would like to do, I understand we have